Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a coaching call with Georgina. Georgina is the mom of 6-year-old Oswald and baby Walter. And Georgina wanted to know how to best support her oldest son, her 6-year-old, who is a really intense little guy with big feelings. And she was really wondering how she could best support him and make things easier at home. Today's coaching call and the follow-up is such a good example of how looking at ourselves and our own childhoods can really change the course of our parenting. And I think you're definitely going to want to stick around to hear the update from Georgina, because holy cow, she really had some major shifts in her life and her parenting. Before we get into the call, I just want to remind you to share this episode with a friend or any friends that you think might benefit from it. The best way that we can reach more people is through word of mouth. So as always, I appreciate any shares that you can give and any reviews on your favorite podcast player. And also, there are some exciting things coming up this spring. So make sure that you are on my email newsletter list. You can sign up at sararosensweet.com/newsletter. I send out a couple emails a week, and this is really the best way to make sure that you don't miss anything, as well as getting weekly inspiration in your email box. I got an email last week from someone who said, every email I end with, if you don't want to get any more emails, here's a way to unsubscribe. And she said, I can't imagine anyone ever choosing that option. I look forward to getting your emails every week. She said she had to chuckle when she saw that because it was so foreign to her, which was really lovely for me to hear. So again, you can go to sararosensweet.com/newsletter if you'd like to sign up so that you don't miss anything and that you get some really great ideas and inspiration and help in your inbox every week. So let's dive in and hear from Georgina. I promise you this was a really good one. I think they all are, but this really stood out for me in terms of the shifts that Georgina was able to make. So let's meet Georgina. Hi, Georgina. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and your family.
Okay, so I'm mum to Oswald, who is 6.5, and I'm also mum to Walter, who is almost 5 months old. So I've got the 2 of them now, and I've got a husband, and yeah, I'm on maternity leave at the moment.
Okay, great. How can I support you today?
It's really a sort of issue that I have with my older son. And he's always been quite a big feeler, I would kind of call him. I think he's very sensitive and he goes he's kind of quickly reactive to situations, and he goes very big. And I really feel like I still feel very lost in those moments when he is angry, which is sort of where he tends to go to when he's dysregulated. So when something happens, and this happens quite frequently, it feels like he goes from nothing to 100 on the scale. And, I feel like I've got tools in like other areas. I've we've developed tools, but for his anger, I just still feel a little bit lost when how to support him in the moment. And also, with at this stage, with his age, there's more that I can be doing to help him to maybe not go there so quickly.
Right. That's so tough. It sounds like he's really sensitive and has that like level of intensity that is hard. It's hard for him and hard for you.
Yeah, I mean, he was quite an unsettled baby, and we found that really difficult to sort of manage at the time. And now having a new baby, we sort of do realise the difference in the personalities. Whereas, you know, first baby, you just don't know what's different to other babies, maybe. And then as he's gotten older, we've realised things like he's very sensitive to noises, he's very sensitive to changes of situation. You know, there's a lot of things that we now understand about him that we didn't know when he was younger. So, you know, it's good to have that level of understanding that we now have that he's a bit older. But the level of like reactivity is still, you know, still seems sort of really high. And I'd just like some more strategies for helping him with that.
Okay. Do you want to give me some examples of, you know, something you can recall with a little detail of something that's happened recently?
I mean, one that we had last week was we'd been playing, and then my husband took the baby out so that he could get some sleep. And it's sort of, we kind of have these pinch points in the day. I think lots of people do, I suppose. And this was sort of, you know, Oswald's getting hungry, the baby needs a sleep, and we need to make dinner all at the same time. And so that's going on. And I'd put on an audio story for him to listen to, and, you know, things were going okay. And then the audio story came to an end, and I asked him if he wanted me to put another one on while I was carrying on cooking. And I can't remember exactly what he sort of said. I think that he asked to maybe watch. Yeah, that was it. He asked to watch a video instead. And I said to him that he couldn't because he'd already watched something, and, you know, this was our sort of screen time. And he completely went from seeming absolutely calm to he's, you know, sort of screamed at me, right, fine then. And he went out and slammed the door and he stomped upstairs. And then, you know, I sort of tried following after him because I always feel like I don't want to leave him alone when he's got this really intense feeling, because I feel like it must be quite frightening and I don't like to leave him. So I followed him, and he'd gone into his room and shut the door. And, you know, I was sort of trying to talk to him through the door, and he's just screaming, go away at me. And I was trying to sort of say to him, you know, I guess I was trying to probably like be too logical, but, you know, and he wasn't in that place. But everything I tried to say, he was just screaming, go away and go away. And
when you say you were trying to be logical, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I was probably trying to say to him, okay, I said no to this, but can we maybe go with another audio story or something like that? You know, I was probably trying to give him like an option, or, you know, or explain to him maybe. I think I was probably explaining what, you know, more about things, because I sort of tend to recognize that I get quite uncomfortable when he's angry. I sort of, you know, if he's, you know, sad, I feel really comfortable and really confident with dealing with it. But I think there's just something where I think anger just, I seem to find it less acceptable somehow. And I feel like it's so disconnecting. Like when he was a bit younger, he was really physical with his anger as well. So he would hit and kick me, and he would pull my hair and things like that. And so obviously sort of he's maturing in how he manages to control that side of things. And I don't always know whether I dealt with it so well that, you know, so part of me worries that when he's sort of going away, taking himself away and telling me to go away, I worry that, you know, is he feeling like he's out of control? And, you know, I just want to support him in it the right way. And I get really in my head thinking that what is the perfect way to deal with this and what is the exact right way to deal with this. And then okay. I think I'm probably not helping so much.
Oh, that probably makes you not be able to stay as present if you're putting all this pressure on yourself for the perfect response, because there is no perfect response, right? We want to do the best we can in the moment to support our child. There's a lot to unpack in what you said. And I want to say, you wrote in the intake questions that you had a parent who got very explosive when you were growing up. And so I think that's partly why it's hard for you. You said that, you know, it's okay. It's easier for you when he's sad than when he's angry. So I would encourage you to just take a minute when he does get angry and caretake your small child self that's getting reactivated. I mean, if you're like a lot of people that I know who did have explosiveness in their childhood, it was terrifying, right? Terrifying. And there's still that part of you inside that is being reminded of how terrifying it was for you when you were little and your parent got explosive with you, or near you rather. And so I think when Oswald does lose his temper or get really angry or upset, take a minute very first off and just give yourself some love and some compassion and remind yourself you're safe now. And even go back to little Georgina and give her some love for how scary that must have been. So I think that might help you in the moment to be able to show up for Oswald when he's upset. And second, I also wanted to point out that it's great news that he's not kicking and hitting now. There are lots of kids who at 6, 8, 10 who are still hitting and kicking when they get upset. So that really shows a lot of maturation on his part, that he is developing some impulse control. And even before you said that he used to do that, I was going to point out to you, wow, like screaming and stomping up the stairs is really a great level of self-control that he's showing to not lash out physically. So that's something really to hold on to also. Do you have any questions or comments about what I've said so far?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot that comes up for me when he's angry, because I know afterwards I often feel really emotionally exhausted, and it feels like it's sort of, that there's more there than just sort of what there is for him. So I like the idea really of taking that moment. I think that I tend not to, because I think I remember being left alone when it was my dad who would lose his temper. I was left alone by everybody, my sister and my mum. Nobody came for me. And I think that that's where my instinct is to do the complete opposite and not like give him any space. And,
I just want to say, you poor woman, and you poor little girl, Georgina, to be alone in that scariness. I just want to reach out and across the ocean and give you a big hug, because that must have been really scary. And I can see how this is like a perfect storm of, not wanting to leave Oswald alone and getting those feelings reactivated in yourself. So I'm glad that you're able to recognize that might be helpful. So I think it's okay if he's alone for a few seconds. Just take 30 seconds and give yourself some love and safety and some compassion.
Yeah, because I think as well in that moment, I tend to also be trying to kind of figure out what I did wrong. I think I take on, responsibility for that. And again, that kind of makes sense because it was me who always would trigger these like explosive outbursts from my dad. I think
Okay, hold on a second. Nothing that you ever did made you deserve to get an explosive outburst from your dad. Nothing. You may have done something super annoying or broken a rule, and you still didn't deserve to have anyone be throwing things or be explosive or yelling at you. So I can see how you would have thought that as a child, because children are egocentric and they tend to think everything's their fault. And that's why in peaceful parenting, we're so explicit about when we do mess up and yell at our kid or whatever, we're so explicit about, I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. You don't deserve to be yelled at. I need to take care of my own feelings. Like it was your dad's job to take care of his own feelings, right? So that's some work I think also that you might do is when, Oswald has an emotional reaction, being disappointed that he can't watch a TV show. I think you have to really focus on he's having a hard time and he's allowed to have his feelings, and it's not, it is because of you, because you said no to the show, but his feelings are not yours to fix, right? He can have his feelings. It's okay if he has his feelings. So he's very upset right now that he can't watch a show, and that's okay. I don't have to fix it. And that's maybe where when you said a few minutes ago, you probably trying to explain too much, right? You're trying to talk him out of being upset. Like if I could just get him to understand why he can't watch a show, then he won't be upset anymore. And then I won't feel uncomfortable with his upset.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
So let's just review so far. When he gets angry and upset, you're going to take care of yourself. Give yourself some compassion, both in the present moment and going back to little Georgina. And you're going to remind yourself that it's okay if he has big feelings. The big feelings are not an emergency. You didn't do anything to, quote, deserve it, and you don't have to fix it.
Yeah. I might have to set myself a timer or something, I think. I might find that tricky. So,
well, you can make a Post-it note for yourself. You can write it on an index card or something. Like I always encourage my clients to write these reminders on an index card, put it someplace accessible. If it's a daily practice that you need to remind yourself, keep it in your back pocket or, put it on the kitchen shelf or something that you can pick it up and look at when you're feeling dysregulated. Because you're right, when you are dysregulated, when you've gotten hijacked because of his big feelings, and in this case, it's sort of like hijacked by just upset, not anger. Like it didn't sound like you were angry, you were just worried and upset. but you're still hijacked. So you don't have as much capacity to access your thinking brain when that happens. So write down what you want to remember and keep it with you, or keep it accessible.
Yeah. It's kind of bringing up another question that I have for you about on the anger side of it, which is that, I don't get angry with him. And I think I really have, quite a fear of expressing anger or frustration at all in front of him. I feel like, obviously probably another part of my childhood background showing up. I sort of wonder whether I'm not, by doing that, am I not showing sort of him that anger is part of the human experience, or am I don't know. I mean, I sort of take myself away if I'm feeling angry, and I don't know whether that's the right way to kind of be. Maybe it links in with where I was asking about how I can help him, with his anger. Is do I sort of need to model more a bit of it?
I think that taking yourself away to calm down when you feel angry is a beautiful thing to model. And I think you can be explicit with him. You know what? Mama's feeling really frustrated and upset right now, and I don't want to yell at you, so I'm going to go to my bedroom and I'm going to take a few minutes to calm myself down. I'm racking my brain trying to think if there's another way to model healthy expression of anger. I don't think that showing him you're angry in front of him by doing something would be helpful. I think modeling taking yourself away is the most helpful thing. You could tell him when you come back, oh, I was feeling so frustrated and angry, so I went to my room and I did XYZ, right? To tell him how you helped yourself with your feelings. But he's already doing that. And I want to talk about a little bit about that, about him taking himself away. And, I do think, though, that you're right to want to model healthy expression of all feelings. Everybody gets angry sometimes. And when we get angry, we have to figure out what helps us feel better, right? And so you could think if there's any other things that you want him to have in his toolbox. You don't want to really have him witnessing your adult expression of anger, but you could give him some suggestions of things that he could do when he's angry. But I honestly, I think him taking himself off to his room is not a terrible thing. And so let's talk about how to support him with that. So you may have heard a lot of peaceful or gentle parenting people who say, don't leave a child alone with their big feelings. And I think that is very wise advice. And I also think that advice, or that sort of sentiment, was created to make us not send kids away when they're feeling angry, right? Like, I'm just going to ignore you when you're having these big feelings, or I'm going to send you to your room, right? Like, that's the leaving children alone with their big feelings. We want to avoid that, but that's when it's coming from us, that like, I don't, you don't exist in my presence when you're angry. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving someone space when they want it, right? When he says, when he goes off to his room and shouts, go away, what I would do is give him some space while making sure that he knows you're still there. So I would say, maybe you follow him upstairs and you say, hey, sweetie. And he says, go away. And you say, I hear you're really upset. I'm going to stay outside your door and I'll check on you in a minute. Or I'm going to go back downstairs and I'll come back and check on you in a minute. You're not alone. So you can respect his desire to have taken himself away while still letting him know that you're there. Or you could say something like, I'm going to come back in a few minutes and see if you're ready for a hug, or if there's anything you want to talk about. I mean, in this case, there probably wouldn't be much to talk about since it was pretty clear cut. He's just upset that he didn't get to watch a show. But I really think it's okay to let kids have space, and it's respectful. And we're not going away and then waiting for them to come out half an hour later, right? It's like we're going away or standing outside the room, sitting down outside the room. Maybe you could pass him a little note under the door. I love you. How are you? If he's a reader. But giving them space while letting them know that we're still there, I think is key.
That's cool. That feels like permission.
Yeah. It's different than the experience you had, which was no one was there for you and you were alone, right? This is like he's maybe developed a strategy that really works for him to be able to go up and give himself a few minutes alone in his room to help himself calm down. And you're not deserting him. You're not saying, come out when you're feeling happy again, or you're not saying, I don't want to hear that screaming. You're just respecting his wish for a little bit of alone time.
Yeah. I mean, I do some of what you've talked about, but I think I throw in a lot more words as well. Like, it's okay to be angry. Everyone can be angry. I think I'm sort of panicking a wee bit because I haven't taken that little bit of time. I think those strategies are going to help me a lot to, I think, especially taking the time and just,
Yeah, because if you're dysregulated, you're sort of panicking inside, right? Like I don't want him to be upset. I don't want him to be angry. I don't want him to be mad at me. And so what can I do to get him out of this, right? Instead, it's like, I'm safe. It's okay if he's angry. It's okay if he has these feelings, and I'm just going to be here for him.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, I love that you had this scenario for us to work with. When we have a kid who has big feelings, I think we also want to spend a little time on thinking about prevention, right? Like, could you have anticipated, like, going back in time that, maybe he was going to be hungry and therefore a little bit more volatile? I guess I'm just thinking about if you could have given him like a little plate of vegetables or something to eat while he was listening to his audiobook.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, we definitely get that he gets, hungry after a school day. And he's also, after school days, he does tend to have a bit more in his emotional backpack. And, we can't always know what we're expecting. I mean, when things are at their worst, it does really feel I really feel like on edge, that I feel like I'm anything, that I've got to get everything sort of spot on. And again, it sort of goes into this idea of, where I start to think I need to get everything right. And we're always quite mindful of trying to make sure that he gets some snacks after school and things. But sometimes, the timing doesn't end up working out quite right. We do try to be quite careful with how we phrase things in terms of, really trying to avoid like hard no's and instead sort of maybe going in with a sort of delaying tactic almost. It's just good to not say a hard no. But yeah, I think probably at the moment we're just, where we've got the baby, I'm definitely, with less sleep, not feeling so emotionally resilient, and I'm not kind of like on top of things so much. Yeah. So I think we're missing a few balls here and there.
Just for people listening, when you do say, try and avoid saying a hard no, that might look like, tell me if this is what you're thinking of. You can watch your show tomorrow. Or like, he says, I want to watch a show. Yes, you can watch your show tomorrow after school. What show are you going to choose? Yeah. And you even move into like giving him his wish and fantasy. Like, when you do watch a show tomorrow, which one is it going to be, or whatever. The interesting thing about that is that what the brain research shows us is that thinking about something we want to do, even when we can't do it, actually lights up the same part of our brain as doing the thing. So I love that strategy of giving them their wish and fantasy. You mentioned that when he comes home from school, he's often quite got a full backpack. For regular listeners of this podcast, they know that a full emotional backpack is when we have tensions and stresses and big feelings that we haven't been able to process in real time that are stored up in our bodies. And the emotional backpack is a metaphor for our body that my mentor, Dr. Laura Markham, invented. And so often a sensitive child will get a full backpack at school, just even through the normal course of a day of navigating social dynamics and the teacher and the expectations and being bossed around and all of those things. Have you tried proactively doing some backpack emptying activities when he comes home?
Yes. And we try. So we've known about special time for quite a while and never sort of fully signed up to it until recently. And we decided that when the baby was born, that we would do special time with him right from the beginning. And, we did probably for like 3 weeks, and it was really good. Like the transition to having the new baby at home went so much better than we were thinking. And now we do recognize how good that is, but it doesn't always happen. So, and he also needs a lot of rough housing at the moment, which again, I'm sometimes just tired and I'm trying to get creative about things. So we've been doing sock wars instead of wrestling and things that are a little bit less physically demanding. So that sort of thing for sure, helps him out. Another area that I have struggled with is the actual literal pickup from school when he can come out with that really full backpack and it's coming out in the playground. And on the walk home, we've got quite a narrow path to go on by the side of the road, and there are other parents and children, and he can be swinging his school bag at me or running away. And sometimes that's happened, as he's come out of the door, you can see his face kind of as he meets me. And I meet him. I love your delight, you know, showing delight in your child. So I always have like a big smile. I'm so glad to see you. I've missed you. Oh, it's so great to have you coming home. But it can be, you know, there's just too much there for him. And those moments can be super hard. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
So is he a kid who likes physical touch?
He doesn't.
Does he like hugs?
He doesn't really seek hugs much. He'll like I gave him like I carried him around and gave him a big cuddle. Like, oh, I was singing to him tonight, and he was like, "That's enough now." So he does like it, but he sort of doesn't seem to sort of seek it that much.
I guess I was just wondering if maybe a big bear hug when he comes out might be regulating, just like soothing his nervous system with some like pressure and connection.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's not a person who likes hugs, then that might.
Yeah, I usually go in with a hug, and usually he kind of like shoves his school bag to me. So it almost like makes a barrier. It seems like he's just needs, you know, almost, because I don't think it happens when my husband goes to collect. And I think it's almost like, you know, there's my safe place. I need to get this, you know, it's just, I guess he's just got to get it out.
Is there a chance that you can play in the schoolyard when you grab him?
Yeah, I could try that.
I would try and chase him around in the schoolyard. Like get him laughing, like, because, you know, just to go back to the backpack emptying activities, special time is wonderful. It's more of a connection strategy than it is a backpack emptying strategy. For backpack emptying, the two main ways kids will process all of those tensions and stresses they're holding on to is through laughter and tears. And the laughter bit it helps to flush the body of all of those, the chemicals and different things that have built up throughout the day that makes him feel, you know, a little bit more testy or cranky or a little more button pushing. So I wonder if you could, you know, go into the schoolyard and play some sort of we have the baby with you?
Usually.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could say, you know, show the baby how fast you can run from, you know, here to that fence post, or, I mean, you know, your child, something that would get him moving, get him laughing before you even attempt the walk home.
Yeah.
And another idea that so just to go back to, you know, when you are home in the afternoon, say you get home, but you still think he has a little bit of full backpack, you don't have him one-on-one to do some rough housing like the sock game, you've got the baby with you. Anything that can make him laugh will help empty his backpack. You know, get him to do, you know, silly tricks for the baby to get the baby to laugh, or, you know, pretend you have, I love this game, pretend you have a remote control and he's a robot, or he has a remote control and you're a robot, but things you can do with the baby there. You can also do, a client shared this with me the other day. I love this idea, doing like when he comes in, and maybe you could do this in the playground to get him laughing. Do like a body check, like, all right, let's make sure everything I sent you with came home today. Head, check. And, you know, you can rub his, like, you know, if he likes the contact, like squeeze his head a little bit, you know, 2 arms. Okay, let me see them. You know, wave those 2 arms. You know what I'm saying? Like go through his whole body and just doing like a check and get him laughing like right then and there. So yeah, do you think those things you could try and see how that might help?
Yeah, definitely. I think I like those ideas. I think that some of the creativity is gone with my baby brain.
It's so hard. It's hard even when you don't have a baby brain. It's so hard to draw within ourselves that creative force.
Yeah. So no, those ideas sound really good. I think that the kind of checklist thing would work really well when I first collect him, just because there can be quite a lot of people around. It's not such a big playground. So I think that moving around sort of a lot would be difficult, but yeah, something like that would be good.
Yeah. Or even having, you know, tell him a couple jokes, you know, I don't know, something to get him laughing.
Yeah.
I was also thinking that I wonder if a strategy of, distracting him while you're picking him up so you can get home and work on emptying the backpack, just, you know, make it from school to home, but distracting him like, oh, I brought your favorite, you know, stuffed monkey to greet you when you got here, or something, that bringing something from
that's
home,
a really good idea.
or a snack, or just something to get you from A to B in one piece. And then you can deal with the backpack when you get home and you have more space and privacy.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. There's quite a lot that I can do with that sort of thing, and I think he'd respond to that really well. He's got some cuddlies that he really, you know, he sleeps with, and things that maybe could come and have a visit to the school.
Yeah. or like a game that you play on the way home to distract him. I know my 17-year-old and 14-year-old went to the dentist together the other day. We live in this city, and they were walking to the dentist and then they walked home. And when they got home, I just thought this was the cutest thing. They said we counted dogs on the way to and from the dentist, and we saw 77 dogs.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought that was hilarious, this 17-year-old and 14-year-old counting dogs. But just even something like that, like when you could have like a challenge every day when you pick them up, like how many dogs do you think we're going to see on the way home? Or have like a scavenger hunt where you have to see like one pine tree, one birch tree, or, whatever's in your neighborhood.
Yeah, great. That sounds really good. Because I think I can often tell, just from looking at him in the doorways, he's coming out to me, whether I'm going to need one of those strategies or whether we're okay. And he's just going to tell me usually, when he's okay, he just talks to me the whole way home. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that sounds great and things. But if I've got a few of these things on like little cards tucked into the buggy, then
Perfect.
I can just pull one out and
you see his face, you're like, okay, time for a card.
I think that's gonna really help, because that transition's super hard.
It is hard. It's the after school meltdown is real, and they just they've been keeping it together all day at school. That's another big part of it. Not only the full backpack, but like I've used up all of my resources to be quote good in school and listening and not getting in trouble. That they fall apart a little bit when they come out of school.
Yeah.
I think we've got some good strategies for you to work on in the next couple of weeks before we check in again. But I also just want to really reiterate the work for you to do, that it's not your job to fix his upset. It's okay if he's upset. Of course we want to, if we can make an easy switch and like he wants the blue cup and you pour his milk into the blue cup instead of the red cup. Sure. Like, little things like that we can respect our children's wishes and their preferences. And when there's a limit that we need to set, such as we're not going to watch a show, it's okay if he's upset about it, and taking care of yourself and the feelings that brings up in you before you try to be there for him. That's what's going to help him develop resilience, and to know that his big feelings are not an emergency, which will help him develop this sort of self-regulation later. It's that experience that he's having with you, being there for him, welcoming his feelings, co-regulating with him. Co-regulating is when kids can use our calm to help calm themselves. You're doing that all the time with a baby right now, right? Soothing your baby when he gets upset. You can do the same thing with Oswald. And really, it's going to be something that you'll see more and more as he gets older, the fruits of your labors.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, well, I look forward to hearing from you when we check in. You'll have to let us know how these strategies worked, and we'll help you fine-tune them if you need some more help.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Hi, Georgina. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi.
Hi. So give us an update. How have things been going with Oswald since we talked last time?
Well, we still probably have, the same amount of times that, he's kind of getting dysregulated or getting upset. But things feel a little bit easier. Well, things feel quite a lot easier for me in terms of how I'm kind of handling myself in those moments, or how things feel for me, because we talked last time about how I was finding those moments, challenging in terms of feeling like I needed to fix something, or, I was sort of getting maybe into a sort of mindset that wasn't helpful for the situation. And I kind of took on board what you were talking about in terms of trying to, not think of it as being that there's something that's gone wrong, and, that reminding myself that Ozzy's allowed to have his feelings. And I had a moment where I collected him from school, and I really wasn't expecting to have, for him to sort of come out from school, not feeling too good. But he came out and obviously wasn't okay. And I wasn't able to do anything to sort of help him in that moment. So we had quite a difficult trip home, where he was sort of 1 minute he was like running off away from me, and then he was coming back and sort of like swinging his bag at me. And I had my 4-month-old with us as well, who was also not happy, crying in the pushchair because he was hungry. So that was a really challenging trip home. And I think getting home was just sort of felt like a sort of survival moment. But then because you'd said to me about letting Ozzy have some time because the baby was crying, I sort of sat down in a separate room to where Oswald had taken himself and sat and fed the baby. And while I was feeding him, I really kind of thought about what you talked about in terms of thinking about my experience when I was young with my dad getting angry, and I kind of closed my eyes and actually I actually sort of saw myself as a child about Ozzy's age, about 6 or 7, I think I would have said I was. And this little girl was saying to me, it's not my fault, and she was really shouting that at me. It was something where I actually then said to this child who was saying this that, yeah, you're right, it wasn't your fault, and it was a really amazing moment actually, because I never have been able to, I think, speak to this child before, speak to myself as a girl who was experiencing anger coming at her and give her some love. And since then, I mean, when I went to, when I finished feeding the baby and I went through, I felt so different. I felt really like, I could approach Ozzy with a really sort of open frame of mind. I didn't have an expectation for him. I didn't feel like I needed to achieve anything. I just was able to go and just be with him, and he had taken that time to find something that calmed him, and we just reconnected straight away. It was really quick and easy to just kind of connect up and come back together. So I really feel like since then we haven't had any of these really big moments like that again, but I feel so much sort of there's less fear for me around these moments. I feel like I'm not on edge quite so much for him having these moments that are kind of scary for me on all these different levels. They were scary for me in terms of keeping him safe in the moment, but also when he's sort of running from me at school, but also just how I feel, the safety that I feel when there's anger around me. Which
That's amazing. I just want to take a minute and congratulate you on this. It feels like a breakthrough to me that you had in terms of going back to what you said at the very beginning of this update, where you said he's still having meltdowns, but what you're bringing to it is completely different. And that's the key, because we can't stop our child from having meltdowns. I mean, we can do some of the preventive stuff that we talked about in the last call and try not to let him get too hungry or, try to find win-win solutions. But ultimately, we can't stop people from having feelings, nor should we, right? He's going to have the feelings. But what was making it tricky for you was that because it brought up so much from your childhood and feeling like you had to fix it, or blaming yourself for these outbursts, you weren't able to welcome his feelings because you were also the victim in the situation today, right? I mean, not today, like this moment, but in your present life, you were the victim of his anger because you hadn't taken care of that part of yourself that needed to know that you didn't have to fix it and that wasn't your fault. And now you're starting to do that. And so you're able to be present for him, which is so huge, Georgina.
It did feel very sort of like a really fundamental kind of change. And I feel like where I had that moment where I really could see myself as a child, but I could also give that child some love, it really felt like I wasn't sort of feeling like I was stuck between this, is it my fault, it's not my fault kind of place. Because I think I've always sort of had this feeling of, just where there's so much that wasn't said, there was nothing that was ever repaired. My dad will never be able to make a repair like that. And I think that being able to sort of say that to myself and also express myself as a child, it was sort of meeting two things in me, that's never, that even when I've thought about things before, it was actually being in that moment and having those feelings there. I don't think I could have done it outside of that moment. So yeah, it's really been so helpful, and and I really get now, I feel like that he can have his feelings. I really feel a lot more comfortable with him having that feeling and not feeling like, there's some, it's not setting off alarms and emergency service kind of thing for me. So
That's fantastic.
I feel like that's a really good place to sort of carry on working from.
And he's only 6, and right now he doesn't have the, emotional self-regulation to know that his big feelings are not an emergency. And that's why he has meltdowns, because to him, they do feel like an emergency. But the way he'll learn that they're not an emergency is the way that you're now responding to him by just welcoming them. You're not afraid of them. You're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to make them go away. And that's the first step in teaching him that big feelings are not an emergency.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think you've really touched on what this work is, what this peaceful parenting work is that, and, I'm sorry if this is a spoiler alert, but the hard work of peaceful parenting is really about ourselves. It's not about getting our kids to do things or not do things. And of course there are like, how do I get them to get dressed in the morning? But really it's all about what we bring to the relationship and what we bring to their challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I wanted to say, because I've been aware of how my childhood, would maybe affect how I parent. I've been aware of that for a while, and I've always wanted to kind of go into this idea of reparenting and sort of speaking to my younger child, but I've never managed to do it outside of, it was this moment. And I think it's in that moment where it's coming up to take that time, because you gave me the permission to take that time that I was always so scared to take before. I think it was only in that time, in that moment, that I could do that process. And I wanted to just say that for anyone else who's who might be listening, who hasn't found the way into that work, that actually I feel like I can see, moments like this in the future being an opportunity for me to do this work and to, to carry on that sort of process that started that day. Because
so you're taking it. So just to clarify that I understand what you mean, you're talking about if you had, say, the exact same thing had happened and you hadn't taken the moment right then while you were still in the thick of it with Ozzy, to just take that quiet moment with Walter, nurse him a little bit and take a few minutes to reflect. That was what made a big difference, was that you were actually doing it in the moment rather than trying to think about it later. And that's when the door opened for, 6 or 7-year-old Georgina to come and speak to you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I've never been able to access it when I've, been trying to think about it in another moment. And it was just, where I think everything was there for me. I think maybe all of those kind of neural connections were firing in the right way, that it could happen for me. So that might be helpful for someone else who's been interested in.
And as you said, you needed the permission to not rush after Ozzy and try and fix it right away, and just to take that space for both of you. And you'd said before that he often does want that space, that he does want to have a little bit of time, but you felt like you were ignoring him or something if you gave it to him. So, just really well done.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it was because, when I was little and my dad would get angry, I would be left alone. So my mum wouldn't come to me and my sister wouldn't come to me, and I was just always on my own. So that's why I've always felt like I needed to go and be with him, because of what I didn't get. But actually, he's a different person. And being able to recognize that he's a different person who has different requirements in that moment, you sort of gave me that permission. I think I said that to you when you were talking about it to start off with. And by having that sort of someone say that was okay for me to do it, I think that gave me the space that I needed. So that was so helpful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, thank you so much for giving us an update on this. And I'm glad that you know that even if Ozzy's still having big feelings, there is still success in this because of what you have brought to it. That the aim isn't like, okay, how do we turn an intense, sensitive child with big feelings into somebody who's just easygoing? That's probably never going to happen, but he will learn as he's getting older. And now you've got more tools to help him when he does have those big feelings without getting overwhelmed yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that, like you were saying, the spoiler alert, everything that I can do that helps me to understand myself, helps me to, be there for him. And that's been so helpful. It wasn't something I was expecting to come out of talking to you, but it's really great. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love these calls because honestly, I never know what's going to come out of them either. So it feels like a discovery for me, and I learn things from the parents that I coach, and I'm grateful to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was so great, wasn't it? After we stopped recording, I just thanked Georgina for her vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage to not only talk to somebody about things like that, but also to come on a podcast and talk about it. So I really appreciate that. And I think that it's going to help so many people. If you are interested in reparenting, something that we mentioned, which is basically taking care of, meeting your own needs and taking care of yourself and trying to give yourself what you didn't get in childhood, you can check out episode 20 with Leslie Priscilla of Latinx Parenting. We talk about reparenting in that episode, so you might want to check that out. Again, please share and rate this podcast. That is the best way that we can meet more people and change the world one family at a time. And please sign up for my newsletter if you would like to make sure that you don't miss anything that I'm offering, or you make sure that you get my informative and helpful, inspirational emails every week. Again, sararosensweet.com/newsletter. I will see you next time on the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.